And then that's how black tax now turns to financial abuse. When people start demanding money from you, when people can't take no for an answer, when people can't understand that you don't have at the moment, and it's a matter of sacrifice. Like sometimes people are not willing to sacrifice. People don't understand that even people overseas, when they send money, it's coming at the cost of something. They're having to sacrifice something in their own life, whether they're having to sacrifice, not buying the things that they really want for themselves, for their kids, or whatever. Not Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Kudzie Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. In today's video, it is going to be a lesson. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about black tax. Now, this is a video that I'm doing after a few people have requested me to talk about the topic of black tax, and I finally decided that now is the right time for me to talk about it. It's such an interesting topic. And for those who don't know what black tax is basically when black people have to take care of their relatives in order for them to come up the chain. So back in the day, as you might know, black people were oppressed, were not given a lot of opportunities. So usually the family would come together and support one person in order for them to kind of have a chance to make it in life. And once that person makes it, that person would then start pulling the other people up. So they would do that by funding them, funding their education, supporting them where they stay and all that. So that's where the concept of black tax came from. And now black tax is tax as you know it is something that you have to pay regularly, to the government. But black tax is something black people have to pay to their families who have sacrificed for them to be where they are. So that's the concept of black tax. Now, growing up, I'm sure a lot of you would have experienced black tax in one way or the other, whether it was your parents who were taking care of one of their siblings, one of their relatives, funding their education, and maybe they were staying with you at your house, or maybe your parents were the people who were being supported by another relative. So, for me growing up, I grew up seeing a lot of black tax in action. I know that in my household, from the age, I could remember, from my earliest memory, we always had some relative living with us who was being supported to complete their education or just find their feet in the city or finding a job, whatever case it was, right up until, I was in my late teens. We always did have someone who we were staying with at home. And I believe for my parents, one of them, at least someone would have helped to, contributed to bringing them up at some point in their lives. So, it's always people try and pay it forward, support another sibling, and that's the way it goes. And that's how traditionally black people have come up. Now, the problem is nowadays there is a very thin line between black tax and financial abuse. I feel like the way things have evolved and the way people are now behaving when it comes to black tax, it is bordering or very heavily leaning towards financial abuse. And in this video, I'm just going to talk about how that looks like, and hopefully I will shed light on this from the people who are funding and who are being funded, so that we can all kind of find a middle ground. And I know that black tax is such a sensitive topic because it affects so many people, especially those people who are living overseas, who are living away from their home country, who have gone to another country in order to, seek for better opportunities. Now, I remember when I was in Zimbabwe in the 2000s, the mid 2000s, like, 2005, 6, 7, like round about that time, a lot of people started going overseas, like to the UK, America, few people to Australia, but it was mostly like the UK and America. And because times were hard, like in Zimbabwe, almost everyone was feeling the pinch that, things were really hard for a lot of people, and people were going overseas to seek for different opportunities. Now, this kind of turned black text on its head. Like, things just kind of went wild from then. I remember, like, people used to dress in nice clothing, and even me, I must confess, I used to think, man, I wish I had someone overseas who was funding me. Because the people who are living on the pound, on the dollar, were living the best life. Like, you could tell, like, people started, renovating their parents' houses. You could just kind of tell the people who had relatives overseas who were helping with the funding. And that black tax really started to be reignited, because there was a little bit of like a break, because it was more like prominent, I think, in people born in the 60s, 50s, in that age group, late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Those people experienced black tax a little bit more, because, the country was still, gaining independence. Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980. So, people who were born before that had to exercise black tax a lot, because things were just inherently more difficult for black people, and they had to support each other. Now, this video, when it was requested to me, it wasn't only requested by subscribers who are Zimbabweans. Even other Africans from other countries were wanting to address the topic of black tax, because it's not only something that is in Zimbabwe. Now, the reason I say that there's a thin line between black tax and financial abuse is because, I feel like people have started taking advantage of that black tax aspect, that people need to look out for the people back home, for the people they left behind, for the people who still need a hand in getting opportunities. And before I dive deeper into that, I just want to share a little story that happened to me when I was here in Australia, and I was dealing with a lady who was from Zimbabwe. Like, this happened many years ago. I met this lady who was from Zimbabwe, and she was doing great work supporting, charity work, supporting disadvantaged children, and she was paying for their school fees and finding people who could help to, support these, underprivileged kids, to send them to school. A lot of them had lost both parents, or they were being cared for by people who had disabilities. Like, they had really, really tough circumstances. And so I got in touch with this lady, and, she told me about the work that she was doing, and it was something that really, really resonated with me. So I was like, you know what, I would love to partner with you, and I'd love to donate here and there whenever I get the chance. I actually didn't say partner. I said I would like to donate whenever I get a chance. So, she was based in Zimbabwe and I was in Australia. So I would send her some money, via Western Union, sometimes when I had a bit of funds. And back in those days, I wasn't even financially stable. You know what I mean? I was finding, I had just found my feet, I had settled, and I really wanted to give back, like a lot of people do. So I used to give this lady some money to fund the kids, and there was this time, I remember one of the months I couldn't afford to send her money to pay for the fees. So I told her, I'm like, hey, I can't send anything this month, because she would always check in every month. She'd be like, hey, are you sending something, whatever, and I would say, yeah, this month I have a little bit of money, I can send this much. And it wasn't consistent. I would send different amounts depending on how much I had to spare. Now, there was one month that I told her, no, this month I don't have anything, and things took a turn. this nice, lovely lady that I had come to know totally did a flip. Like, I couldn't believe it. She started sending me these abusive texts, like saying, like, you need to send that money. What? I need to. Like, I was supporting her and the work that she was doing because it was really, really good work. And she was, reaching out to quite a lot of disadvantaged kids. And I'm like, how do I need to send money now? Like, I told you that, I would send money whenever I had money. And she couldn't take the fact that I said, I don't have anything this month. She was like, so what's going to happen to those kids? And it was text upon text upon text upon text of abuse and straight up demanding for money from me, to the point that, I tried to tell this lady what was happening. I tried to explain to her that, look, when I get a chance to send something, I will. But right now, I don't have anything to send. And anyway, I'm not obligated to send. It's not like we're in a contract or anything. I'm just doing it voluntarily, like, out of the goodness of my own heart, like, here and there. That was what I told her I would do. So she was really, really, really angry about the fact that I said, no, I don't have anything, to the point that I had to block her so that she couldn't get in touch with me. That's how much she was starting to harass me and wanting to get money. And I was like, are you serious? Like, are you actually serious that you're actually, like, literally yelling at me, shouting at me, and she was sending like voice notes? What? I was so surprised and I was taken aback. Like, I tried to help you. I never promised you anything. I said I would try and help whenever I could. And right now I can't. And I think in her mind, it was like, you're in Australia. What do you mean you can't? What do you mean you don't have? And I find that, that's so unfair. People think that people living overseas don't face tough times, that don't run out of money. I mean, it's just another country, just like any other country. Like, people face tough times and they run out of money. People get broke. But to her, like, it wasn't gonna happen. And I really felt like, part of me really felt that, this woman is only doing this to me because she knows that I'm in Australia. She assumes that because I'm in Australia, I have access to a lot of funds. And I don't think that if I was in Zimbabwe, she would be pestering me the way she would be if I told her I don't have money, because she would have this like understanding or this empathy that, yeah, I know, sometimes things get hard. But people have this perception that if you're living overseas, you shouldn't face tough times. And just because you're in another country, you should have access to money all the time. So I use that example because that's how things get sometimes when it comes to black tax. There's this sense of entitlement that people get when it comes to people overseas, that you need to support me, you need to send me money, don't you know that things are harder for me than they are for you for some reason? Like, it's like there's this sense of entitlement, which now puts this whole manipulation thing, and then that's how black tax now turns to financial abuse. When people start demanding money from you, when people can't take no for an answer, when people can't understand that you don't have at the moment, when people want things now, when the financial requests come back to back at a rate that just doesn't make sense, and you are now acting as an actual bank, like just like an ATM machine, where people are not worried about your actual emotional welfare. They don't want to ask, how are your kids? They just want to ask, we need this money, we need it now, we've got another financial request. And it's like you just serve the purpose of, meeting their financial needs. And I think that is what is frustrating a lot of people living overseas, because there are people, unfortunately, who are taking advantage of their relatives and their siblings and whatever, like, way you're related to people who are living overseas, and you're wanting them to bankroll your life while you sit back and relax. And I think that's the point that I just want to really, really touch on in this video, that, this whole manipulation and financial abuse aspect, and, labeling it black tax, like hiding under the umbrella of black tax when you're manipulating people, when you're financially abusing people, should stop. And it's not on. And I feel like, people are frustrated. People who are overseas are frustrated. Now, there is a difference, because people think, oh, your parents took care of you, now you should take care of them. When it comes to like parents and things like that, I feel like it is reasonable. It is very reasonable. And I would do that for my parents. If my parents are at an age where they can no longer take care of themselves financially, I would definitely chip in to, help to take care of them. You know what I mean? But it will be at the level of which I can manage, not what they demand. And it's reasonable to take care of parents who can no longer take care of themselves. It's reasonable to take care of people like who are incapacitated in whatever way, whether it's because of age, like they're underage, they're not able to work, they're under the age of 18, they're still in school, they still need a bit of financial support. I feel like it's quite reasonable if you have the means to support your family. Now, the difference is when you get people who are adults over the age of 18, you are an adult. If you get tried in court for anything, you go to an adult prison. You don't need anyone to sign for you as a guardian because you're considered an adult. You represent yourself in whatever capacity, whenever you need to represent yourself. The law recognizes you. You are able to vote. If you fall in that category, you're an adult. And the problem is when adults don't want to do things, like they actually take a back seat in their lives and then they expect someone else who is living overseas to bankroll their lives. Now, I have seen this with my own eyes. I have seen this when I was living in Zimbabwe. I have seen this even living here in Australia. I have seen people who do this, people who live in Zimbabwe or any other African country who don't want to do things that they think are beneath them. Like if you say to someone like, go and sell tomatoes, like people are selling tomatoes, go and work as a housemaid, go and work as a gardener. Try telling that to someone who is living in Zimbabwe and who's financially dependent on you. Like, go and find a job, even a menial job. Go and work as a maid. Go and clean somewhere. Go and work. They will be so offended. They'll be like, oh, how dare you think I can do such a job? But then they expect you to send money from you doing those kind of jobs when you're living overseas. Like, there are people who are cleaning. There are people who do work that is very tough, but they're taking care of people who think that it's beneath them to do that kind of work, but they expect people to do that work when they're living overseas, as if it becomes less hard if you're cleaning overseas versus you're cleaning in Zimbabwe. It's actually the other way round. Like, it's actually harder to do here because it's stricter. They're stricter on the work hours and all that. And racism is there in the workplace. Like, people face really tough times in the workplace. So, it's not beneath you to do something to sustain yourself. There are people who are, you see those women who have a child on their back and they're selling tomatoes and they're making ends meet. They're trying to send their kids to school. They're supporting each other and, they're supporting themselves, and maybe they're renting one room with them and like their 4 kids, and they're doing it and they're not financially reliant on anyone. And then comes these people who are 18 years and over, who are living the life, busy sitting down, pushing cushion, like relaxing, waiting to go to Western Union World Remit to pick up the money that someone has been working for, yet you're an adult and you feel like it's not your responsibility to take charge of your own life. That's where I think financial abuse comes in. Because if you're an adult and, why can't you do what other adults are doing around you to take care of yourself, just like everybody else? And yes, people can support you when you're overseas. Doesn't mean that if you're an adult, now you can't get supported. No, but black tax, even back in the day, even back in my parents' age, black tax was never permanent. These days, black tax is permanent. You get people who have been supported by someone for decades, for years and years and years and years, and there doesn't seem to be an end date in sight. Back in the day, there was a start point and an end point when it came to black tax. If you're taking care of a sibling, for example, maybe you pay for their high school education until they get, to their 6th form or their, 4th form or whatever. And then that's like 12th grade or 10th grade. And then, you helped support them to get a job. And then they're on their own. They have to support themselves. But nowadays, I feel like people do not put an end date to black tax. And it's something that is ongoing. And the most difficult thing when it comes to black tax is, there's a lot of manipulation. If someone says they don't have money, like people guilt trip them, people emotionally manipulate them to keep funding, like keep doing things, and people are having to get loans. People are having to break their backs getting extra jobs just so they can afford not to support themselves and their kids, but to support other like able-bodied adults that are staying overseas. And I think that is so unfair. So unfair. And people living overseas, they want to stay connected to their families. And sometimes there's this risk that your family will not communicate with you. Your family will see you in a bad light if you cease supporting them financially. And people want that connection because they were living overseas. People know that, as much as you might assimilate and, be part of the culture, you always have that longing to connect with your relatives back home. So sometimes that link between connecting with your relatives is that financial support. And in order to keep that connection going, people need to keep on financially supporting people, even if they're breaking inside. And people keep demanding and demanding and demanding, sometimes unreasonable requests, even from parents. Even though I said, yes, it's perfectly reasonable to support parents, and it's something that should be encouraged for you to support your parents when they're old. Even people here, even white people support their parents. It's something that is just part of normal human nature to support your elder relatives, your older people, when they can't sustain themselves. It's something that, should be part of human nature. But sometimes people are unreasonable, even when they're being supported and their parents, they're demanding more than they actually need. Or sometimes the child says no, and instead of empathizing to say, hey, you're facing a tough time, how are you going? You say you can't do this at the moment. We can go without this and this. We can try and cut back on this and this and this so that we can take the strain off of you. Instead of doing that, they're like, why? Why can't you give me? It's because of, it's because of your wife. It's because of your husband. It's because of this. It's because of this. Why? We need. And we are killing each other. We are literally making life hard for each other because of this black tax thing. And I feel like, it's time that we really, really look at it. Both the people receiving money overseas and the people sending money back home. It's time you look at, is this actually working? And is this bordering on financial abuse? Are you actually happy sending the amounts that you're sending at the frequency you're sending at? Or would you prefer that it be cut back? Or, you come to the table and try and negotiate something more reasonable. And the requests, don't come in as thick and fast. And sometimes when, things happen in all families, people pass away, people get sick and whatever. And, everyone knows, every family, almost every black family has a WhatsApp group. Almost every black family has a WhatsApp group. And most times in the WhatsApp groups, it's people who are overseas, in most cases, who are looked to provide the financial assistance, I think, in a lot of situations. And, people can be quite comfortable. I have been to Zimbabwe a couple of times since I've lived in Australia. And let me tell you, some people out there in Zimbabwe are living more comfortably than people overseas. They have more means than people overseas. But when it comes to crisis, it's expected that people overseas are supposed to chip in more or foot the majority of the bill. Yet there are people who are in Zimbabwe who are very much capable, but, and it's a matter of sacrifice. Sometimes people are not willing to sacrifice. People don't understand that even people overseas, when they send money, it's coming at the cost of something. They're having to sacrifice something in their own life. Whether they're having to sacrifice, not buying the things that they really want for themselves, for their kids, or whatever. Not really driving the car they want to drive, not living in the house they want to live, not wearing the clothes they want to wear, not eating out at the places they want to eat out. It's a sacrifice. But people don't sometimes appreciate that. And people don't want to make the same sacrifices if they're living at home. to say, okay, let us go without the cars we want to drive. Let us go without the houses we want to live in. Let us go without the clothes we want to wear, so that we can support someone, or we can pour into this need that has arisen in the family. People don't want to do that. They expect the burden of sacrifice to fall on the people living overseas. I think that is unfair, and that should be put to an end. And it is killing people like living overseas. Like, you talk to people, most people are being impacted one way or the other. And people are having to do like extra shifts, do all these things to help people. And they're doing it from the goodness of their heart. But you can sometimes tell that, hey, this person's being financially abused, because the people that are sending these requests are being unreasonable. And then you hear, I'm sure we've all heard the stories that, someone has a relative overseas who's bankrolling their life, and they're busy living the dream. They're driving nice cars, they're dating so many ladies or men or whatever, and people are thinking they're a big shot at the back of someone else who's breaking their back literally to support you financially. And this person doesn't want to go and be a housemaid, be a gardener, do whatever is available, because they think it's beneath them, but it's not beneath the person who's sending them money. I think that as Africans, we should really, really look with a magnifying glass on this issue of black tax, and start really, really analyzing how it's impacting our lives. And then the people, the adults, the able-bodied adults who are consistently expecting another able-bodied adult to support them and their families, should really also consider what they are doing emotionally to that person. How they are actually financially abusing the other person, because that other person is probably wanting to maintain a relationship with you. They don't want you to see them like they're neglecting their family. And these things do happen. If the person says, no, I don't have that money, now you're neglecting the family. We sacrifice so much to be where you are. Now you don't want to take care of us. Now you don't want to look out for us. I have heard it and I have seen it. It does happen. And it's sad. It is really, really sad. And I hope that if anything else, this video would just help people to reflect on how black tax might be impacting your life, and if you might be financially abused or be financially abusing someone who you love because of this umbrella. You're falling under the umbrella of black tax. Even a child, there's no child who breastfeeds forever. Every child has to learn to start chewing food on their own, start eating other things as they grow. And I feel like, there should be a start and an end date. Black tax should not be indefinite. I'm not saying it should stop completely, because I know there is a need. Black people have been financially disadvantaged for centuries, and there is a need for us to look out for our own and to financially help each other out. There is an actual need, but there should be a definite start date and a definite end date, so that someone does not become a liability. It is for the purposes of empowering someone to stand on their own 2 feet, not for you to carry that person literally on your back for the rest of your life. That is not what it was meant to be, and that's not what it should be. People should be able to get to a point where they financially sustain themselves. And I know things are hard in Zimbabwe and a lot of African countries, but the thing is, do what you can. If you can't afford to live in the 3-4 bedroomed house that you want to live, that your relative is funding, just go and live in a 1-bedroomed house. Do what you can. There are people who are doing it without financial support. Do what you can. You shouldn't be able to upgrade your life just because you've got someone who can help you out. Come to a point when you're like, you know what? This is what I've seen in my life. All I can afford is maybe a room that's worth $40 a month. Maybe that's what I can afford by doing this, and this. Work hard, do whatever, find whatever you can do and lessen the burden. Find a way to cut back, even if you still need a bit of financial support from your relatives, but find a way to cut back on your lifestyle, so that you can lessen the burden on the person who is financially supporting you. Now, this video has been more of a rant. It has been a rant, but I just wanted to drive that point that, hey guys, let us stop financially abusing each other, because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone deserves a good quality of life. Everyone deserves to be mentally well, and we don't want to be having our family, the people we love the most, be the people who are causing us a lot of stress, you know. And we want, it's, you know, each adult for themselves. If you can vote, if you're able-bodied, like if you can work, just find whatever you can do. Live off the land, do something. Zimbabwe has got vast land. There are rural areas, there are rural homes that are abandoned, they've got no one, that have got structures, housing structures there, but there's no one living there. But people prefer to live in their town, in the towns, and have someone else bankroll their town life. That's not fair. If you see that you can't do it, maybe go and live where it's more manageable. I have relatives of mine who have moved from the cities back to the rural areas because they couldn't sustain the life in the city. It was just too expensive. In the rural areas, you don't have to pay for water, you don't have to pay for electricity, you can farm a lot of your food, there's vast land. Like, there are people who are doing it, and they're choosing not to be a financial burden on someone else. And that is an option that other people should consider. You shouldn't think that it's beneath you to do certain things. If you can't afford, there is nothing beneath you. Do the things that you can afford. Try and sustain yourself and your family if you're an adult who's over the age of 18. Now, that's all from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you don't take any offense, because this was simply addressing a topic that has been highly requested. One of the most requested topics on this channel has been the topic of black tax, and I just had to talk about it, just had to address it, and hopefully it is helpful in some way to someone who's watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.